We bring in Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, the Monday morning quarterback, who joins us. And by the looks of your room there, you love yourself some Ohio State Buckeyes there. It's just by accident that Paulie wore his Michigan T-shirt today.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that. Are you a Michigan guy, Paulie?
I couldn't have gotten into Michigan if you doubled my GPA. No, I went to Southern Illinois.
I got an even better story. I come from a long line of Michigan people, and I couldn't get in, so I went to the rival.
Yeah, but where did you grow up? Are you from Michigan?
No, I'm from Massachusetts. My dad's from Detroit, though, and so my dad's side of the family is almost entirely from Michigan. Everybody went to Michigan or Michigan State, and yeah, I was the black sheep. I went to the other Big Ten school.
Yeah, but people call this a rivalry, and I'm from Ohio, and I say it's not a rivalry because Michigan's not on the same level as Ohio State. What do you think of that?
It's not. It's to me, over the last 17, 18 years, I mean, it's like when I was in school there, Dan, it was the tail end of the Lloyd Carr, John Cooper thing, and it's amazing what's happened. And I think honestly, I think because it matters more to people in Ohio, that's why things have gone the way they've gone. But from what Tressel's done, the fact that they've been more dominant since after Tressel left is unbelievable.
Yeah, but why does it matter more to Ohio State fans than it does Michigan fans?
I don't know. You're probably as good to answer that as I am, right? Because you're from there. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just more – I just think it's more ingrained in the culture in Ohio. And I think the other thing is, I mean, when I went to school at Ohio State, I don't know if it's still the same way there, but I think 95% of the people that I went to school with were from Ohio.
Yeah.
And Michigan, a lot of the people didn't grow up with it. I mean, a lot of the people that go to Michigan are from New York or from California. And so I think it's a little less ingrained in the people who went to Michigan than it is the people who went to Ohio State.
Yeah, but I think when you're with everybody loves a winner, therefore it's more important to Ohio fans because they're on the winning side of this, whereas Michigan fans not as excited, sort of downplaying this, and maybe that's why it means more. I don't know.
I don't know, though, because, Dan, they ran off John Cooper because he couldn't beat Michigan. Like, John Cooper was fine otherwise. And they ran him off simply because he couldn't beat Michigan. So,
but everything's good now, Albert.
I don't think anybody in Ohio was downplaying the rivalry when it wasn't going well for them.
Well, the fact that it is going well, that they're fine with their coach because whoever their coach is, because they know that Michigan's coach is Jim Harbaugh, and they always feel like they have the upper hand there. Do you see a scenario where Harbaugh eventually leaves Michigan for another coaching job?
I mean, I think he certainly wants to take another crack at the NFL. I do think that he has some unfinished business there. I honestly think it sort of bothered him. The way that he, like his brother got to the mountaintop against him, and I've always felt like there was that little piece of unfinished business. So I don't know how long he's going to stay at Michigan. I know a lot of people felt like he'd probably be at Michigan for 4 or 5 years, then go back because he's been sort of a short termer at the other places he's been. So he's already sort of lasted longer than some people thought he'd last at Michigan. I think he'll eventually be back in the NFL. I'm just not sure when.
Do you think Ohio State fans want Jim Harbaugh to stay as head coach at Michigan?
I mean, right now, I'd say yes. I mean, Ryan Day's out recruiting him. He's out coaching him. He's beating him on the field. I like the fact that not just Urban Meyer beat Jim Harbaugh this way, the fact that Ryan Day's beating him this way too and has all the momentum. I know this. There's just seems to be a lot of unlocked potential left in that Michigan program, and it's super interesting to me the idea that that another coach could come in here and after the Urban Harbaugh thing, take Ohio State to another level, and now Jim Harbaugh's got to catch up to him. It'll be interesting to see where it goes.
All right, Albert Breer joining us, senior NFL reporter, MMQB. Now let's talk about your day job here. I was all excited about Sky Judge. I really was. And now it's being tabled. Why is it being tabled? And is the replay official getting some more responsibilities?
Well, it's not really it's being tabled, but it's being tabled in the way that it was written by the coaches subcommittee. And in particular, the Ravens coach, John Harbaugh, and the Chargers coach, Anthony Lynn. And the difference between what they wanted to do and what's going to be going in an experimental basis is really about who the Sky Judge himself is. And the coaches really wanted it to be a more experienced guy. So either a retired head referee or a more experienced member of the crew, with younger guys becoming the 8th member of the crew. They really wanted an experienced hand up there, somebody that everybody could trust, being in charge of monitoring the broadcast and being in charge of having that view up top. And really the league wasn't ready to take that step. And so Walt Anderson, who's become very involved over the last 4 or 5 months, he was an on-field official until the end of the season. He's moved into a senior role in the NFL office now. He sort of suggested, hey, listen, the replay officials we have are good. We'll change out a few of them and we'll get some good guys in here. And then let's give this a shot in the preseason. And if it works in the preseason, let's try it in the regular season. And if it works in the regular season, we can expand on it in 2021. And so there's been a 2-year process for guys like John Harbaugh and Andy Reid and Anthony Lynn. And all these guys really just want to give the officials a resource. And the idea was to give them a high-end resource by giving them an experienced official up top. This is sort of the compromise where the replay official, the existing replay official, will have expanded duties.
I don't know if you saw the comments Dean Blandino made on the show a couple of days ago where he said when he was in charge of the officials, there was a break glass in case of emergency where New York would contact the official on the field and say, guys, huddle up. Because as Dean said, we were worried about something extreme, historically bad or controversial here. We contacted the NFL. The NFL said, we have no comment. And then I talked to a source who said, that's the way Dean did things, not the way we do things now. What do you make of that?
Well, Dean was very close with a lot of the coaches, and he had that trust with the coaches, Dan. And that's one thing that came up. I think that's been lost the last couple of years, was a lot of the respect between the coaches and the league office was built by Dean Blandino. And so when Dean went into TV, I do think a little bit of that it was lost, which is where some of the issues have come in the last couple of years. I can also say this, like the Sky Judge with certain crews has actually already existed. And so I'll give you a great example. Everybody remembers the Earl Thomas hit on Mason Rudolph last year, right? Yep. So if you guys go back and watch that broadcast, go pull it up on Game Pass or whatever. Watch when they cut to commercial after Mason Rudolph goes down. There's no flag on the field. When they come back from commercial, there is a flag on the field. It took about 35 to 40 seconds for the flag to go on the field. Well, what happened there? Well, John Harbaugh went over to the head referee, says, well, wait a second, where'd that flag come from? And the head official said to him, the guy up in the booth told me to drop it because the hit was egregious. And Harbaugh said to the head official, oh, you mean like a Sky Judge? So they've actually been sort of using some of these things in spots over the last couple of years. I think the way what the coaches really wanted was to formalize that, make sure everybody had the benefit of it. And again, this isn't coaches versus officials. The main thing for these coaches was giving the officials the benefit that every single one of us sitting at home with a cable subscription has, which is 8, 10, 12 different angles of crystal clear HD to see everything from. I think these coaches really thought it was crazy that the guys in the field weren't getting the benefit that tens of millions of people have sitting on their couches every day.
Yeah, the people who are in charge to make these calls have the worst view. We have the best view, so right. Why not take advantage of that to help them? I still don't understand the Saints-Rams call, non-call. The fact that there were 2 fouls, including helmet to helmet, were not called. That's where I thought, and Dean Blandino was not in the home office in New York to be able to, hey, guys, huddle up, because I think they did huddle up, and they still missed it. So how do you prevent that when we get to the postseason when you have all-star crews?
Well, and I think, and one thing that actually was brought up to me, I didn't know this, Dan, and maybe you're aware of this because you've been on the Super Bowl broadcast. Did you know that there are extra officials on the sideline during the Super Bowl that have headsets on and that are communicating with the head referees?
No.
Like, I didn't even know that. Like, and over the last couple of days of making phone calls on this, I sort of learned that. And really, it's like you said, Dan, they're trying to give more resources to these guys. And so, the idea is the head referee is still in charge of the game. But there's a guy up top, and that guy has access to the broadcast. That guy's also watching from the booth, so he has that vantage point. And so he's going to be able to communicate with the head referee. The head referee doesn't have to do anything. Like, this guy doesn't have the guy up top doesn't have the authority to stop the game. He can't throw a flag. He can't do any of that. But within the first 15 seconds of the play clock, he can buzz down. Now, I'll ask you, like in that Saints-Rams game, it didn't take 15 seconds for all of us to know it was the wrong call, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, the guy up top would have called down to the head referee, would have said, drop the flag. The ref would have dropped the flag because he trusts the guy up top. and we would have had a penalty. The Saints would have had a first down, and they'd be going to the Super Bowl. And so it's giving them that resource where it's not about getting every single judgment call right. It's about getting the black and white ones that we know are wrong corrected. And, I think that this is an efficient way to do it. It may take a year or two for them to work out the kinks and get the right people up top, but it's really, really important to these coaches that they at least start that process in 2020.
The onside kick, where do we stand with that?
So there have been some unintended consequences that have come up here. And I think what's most interesting about it to me, Dan, is that this is a rule that they haven't even put in yet, and they're already having to fix it. So that makes me a little skeptical about where we're going, right? I mean, like, you look at it, so we didn't have to have this whole rule for a day before everybody could realize that there were issues with it. So when they tied up, there was the thought, okay, like, if you say you take the lead, say I score a touchdown, I go up by 4 points, whatever, I'm kicking off, and there are 6 seconds left in the game. Well, if I'm that team, rather than kicking it to the other team, wouldn't I just snap the ball into 4th and 15, tell my quarterback to run around for 3 seconds and throw it to the moon? Like, it would make sense to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so they've taken care of that by making it an untimed down. But I think the fact that we're already troubleshooting the thing before it even goes in at least makes me skeptical about how this thing's going to work. Listen, I understand it's a health and safety measure that they feel like they've got to take the kickoff and the onside kicks out of the game. And that's all fine. I understand that part of it. And I understand that it's a fun thing for everybody to talk about. But it does make me a little bit kind of, I guess, just skeptical over the whole thing, that they're already having to troubleshoot it before it even goes in.
In 3 years, do we have kickoffs in the NFL?
I think we do, but I think they're going to look different. And I honestly, if I were the league, I would have taken the XFL idea and I would have just implemented it in the preseason and see how it works. I mean, look, like, I can tell you, most coaches I've talked to are really protective of that phase of the game, that really believe that it should remain in the game, that it's a part of the game, and that you'd be bastardizing the game by taking it out of it. And so I know a lot of the special teams coaches have done a lot of hard work to try to preserve the kickoff as best they can. It's hard to do it. But, I think the XFL found an effective way to sort of attack this. And I mean, to me, it was inventive. It was fun. It didn't totally take the idea of the kickoff away. You still had kickoff return touchdowns. So I know that that's one they've discussed. I'm surprised they didn't at least maybe look at the idea of implementing it for the preseason. I'd expect it'll get more discussion in 2021.
I don't understand that you want to take away the onside kick because you don't want another collision or collisions, but then you're going to have the marquee players who are going to come back out on the field for a 4th and 15. I would rather have the onside kickoff team than backup linebackers than I would. I got Patrick Mahomes back there for a 4th and 15 with the marquee players on the wide, on the offense, and then the defense. It's a pass. I don't know. You're asking for contact there as well.
I mean, is it a pass interference down too? That's the other thing, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Like, 4th and 15, or do you have a better shot of converting that by just throwing it up to Julio Jones and hoping somebody yanks on his jersey? You know what I mean? Like, there are certain things like that could come into play too. I actually talked to one coach, and this may be a little conspiracy theory-ish, but there are some coaches that feel like the NFL has, actively looked to try to take the middle class out of the league. And who's the middle class? Well, the middle class is guys like Matt Slater on the Patriots, who are making $3-4 million a year and who are playing probably 6 or 8 plays a game. And so, there are, I think there is a feeling that there are some ulterior motives here on the part of the owners. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but certainly I think that there are coaches that really feel like the kickoff is, they've done a lot of work to try to keep the kickoff as is, and they really should try not to bastardize it too much.
I'll leave you with this. Jadeveon Clowney still on the outside looking in with maybe Tennessee, maybe back to Seattle. The Cleveland Browns offered a great deal, which I was surprised. You have Myles Garrett. You're going to have to pay him. But where does Jadeveon Clowney fit with either of these 3 teams?
I always thought that his best option was to go back to Seattle, just because I thought that was the best chance for him to have a great year. He's one of these guys that's sort of caught up in the fact that he can't take a physical. There is some instability in his knee. I know teams that were interested really wanted to have their own doctors get their hands on him. Obviously, that's not possible given the circumstances. and then there are questions about his personality. He really wore out his welcome in Houston. That's another reason why if a team's going to sign him to a big deal, they'd want him to come in and talk to them. And so those have been issues. I think his financial expectations were certainly an issue. He saw what guys like Frank Clark and DeMarcus Lawrence got, and he just shot too high early on. So I think his best bet right now is to find a place where he can go on a one-year deal and go to a place where the scheme's familiar. Cleveland scheme, they run a Seattle type of scheme. Scheme would be familiar there. Seattle, of course, if they'd have him back, if he could work a way to do a one-year deal there, even if it was for less money, I think it'd be smart because he's poised to have a big year there. And then, of course, the other one to keep an eye on is the Tennessee Titans because of his relationship with Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, Cleveland's got $37 million to spend here, right? Is that why didn't they spend it earlier in free agency?
Remember who's running the team there too, Dan. I mean, like come hell or high water, they're going all in on the analytics model. You can see it in the people that they've hired. You can see it in kind of the way they've set that organization up. Paul DePodesta has a lot of power in that organization. And the way analytics work in every sport, right? You put values on people and you don't really stray from that too much. And so even if you have money to spend, if the value is not there, you're not going to spend the money. And so, I think the Browns will eventually wind up spending, but you look at the positions they spend on. I mean, they go and get a tackle. Tackle's a premium position. So they spent on a Jack Conklin. I think really a lot of this boils down to, how their models are working and where they're being kind of guided to spend. Again, like if you're working on in that sort of setup, generally you're going to let value drive you. And if you don't think the value is there, even if you do have the money to spend, you're not going to overspend.
Speaking of which, Dak Prescott, everybody seems to be, sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for Dak Prescott to. What are the options here?
July 15th. I mean, to me, July 15th is, really the date that I think we've all had our eye on the whole time. And deadlines spur action. And if you want to look at the Cowboys' history, they've generally taken care of all of these guys. Zach Martin, Jalen Smith, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zeke Elliott, Amari Cooper. They take care of their own guys. There are very few guys that they've wanted to keep that they have not been able to lock up long term. The key here, though, Dan, is going to be the length of the deal. Just by sitting on his hands, okay, just by doing nothing, Dak Prescott either gets $31 million this year and becomes a free agent at 27, $70 million over the next two, free agent at 28, or $120 million over the next three, and a free agent at 29. And so he doesn't have to do anything to exercise one of those three options. And so the Cowboys have to convince him they're putting something in front of him that's good enough to walk away from those three options. They haven't done that yet. And I still think the key to this deal is going to be how long it is. Dak Prescott would like a shorter deal that'll allow him to go back to the table in 3 or 4 years and capitalize on all the new TV money, the gambling money coming into the league. The Cowboys would like to sign him to a longer deal, a 5 or a 6 year deal like they did with Smith, with Elliott, with Lawrence.
Yeah, but it's amazing that Dak Prescott is making more money by not doing anything, by just sitting. Like his value keeps going up because, Deshaun Watson's what he's going to get paid. Well, they're waiting for all of this, right?
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, that's where you're playing with fire if you're the Cowboys, right, Dan? I mean,
yes.
The big one sitting out there is Patrick Mahomes. If you, you could sit here and say, well, God, $40 million a year seems like a lot for Dak Prescott. And then Pat Mahomes goes and signs a deal at 41 or 42. Like, then what? You know what? Like, then that's just where the market is. And so, I know a lot of people have said it's tough to swallow the idea of Dak Prescott at $40 million a year. Well, I mean, we can go down the list of guys who were the highest paid players in the league over the last 4 or 5 years. Was Derek Carr the best player in the league? Was Jimmy Garoppolo the best player in the league? Was Matt Ryan the best player in the league? Was Kirk Cousins the best player in the league? At one point or another, all of those guys were the highest paid player in football. It's just the way you pay quarterbacks. And so he's the next one at the table. So he's going to be the highest paid guy. And again, I think it would behoove the Cowboys to try and take care of this as soon as they can so they don't wind up having to pay a tax because they waited until after Patrick Mahomes' deal is done.
Thank you for spending time, Albert. Great stuff.
You got it, Dan. Thank you.
All right, Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback.